Hello, everyone, and welcome to Economics and You. I'm your host, Mr. Samuelson, and today we have a guest feature, my third hour class. Hey! Or at least Angel. All right, today we're going to be putting together supply and demand. Over the last few lessons, we looked at demand and what influences it, and we looked at the lines on a graph. Then we looked at supply, what influences it, and its line in the graph. Today we're going to be seeing how those two fit together. Equilibrium prices. Equilibrium prices are the essential point of this microeconomics series of lessons. This is a point where producers, those with supply, and consumers, those who control demand, work together to identify the best price for a good. This is the equilibrium price. This is where your quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. It's where the price works for both. There's enough demand and enough supply at this one price point. And changes in supply and demand can shift this price point, but wherever the market meets and we have that supply meeting demand, that is your equilibrium price. Now, prices and signals. Producers and consumers both respond to prices, and we went over this with the law of demand and the law of supply, right? Producers want to produce more when the price is high. Consumers will demand more when the price is low. When the price goes down, consumers want more, but producers will produce less. So we've got to figure out the right equilibrium. Now, when a shortage of a good exists, a price will increase, and it's going to increase because people demand a product more than it exists. So you raise the price to try to hit that equilibrium, and vice versa. When there's a surplus of goods, your price will drop. Now, in a free market economy, remember we learned about free market economies and we learned about command economies and traditional economies and mixed economies. In a true free market economy, all of these changes occur on their own. Prices will rise and fall until consumers and producers find that equilibrium price. But there exist things called price controls. We live in a mixed economy where the government does interfere with this market relationships. Now, they will do this for a number of reasons, and they're almost always well-intentioned reasons. But it doesn't always work out the way they plan. So we're going to be looking at both sides of that. Firstly, just by saying government does this to protect people. They do this because we want to make sure that people get food on their table and have a job and that they make a living wage. And governments also do this to support businesses. They need to make sure that businesses are profitable. Or in some cases, like our food supply, the government actually wants to build in something to make sure we have a surplus. That way, in case something goes wrong, we have extra food. We don't want a perfect market in our food supply. We want to create extra food. And then if some food goes to waste, that's fine. That's better than the alternative where a portion of our population goes without food. So this is part of the positives of price controls. But let's look at the two types of controls that we have. One, we have price ceilings. A price ceiling is a limit on how much can be charged for a good. It's the government saying you are not allowed to charge more than X amount for this good. Now, what price ceilings do is they create shortages because supply can't meet demand. When you create a price that is artificially low, whenever we have a low price, we have high demand. But whenever we have a low price, we have low supply. So we don't have supply and demand meeting each other. Okay, on this graph, we can see here a price ceiling. Now, here's our demand line. When the price ceiling means that the price cannot rise above this, then people demand QD, or quantity D, the quantity demanded, right here. However, suppliers are only willing to supply QS. They'll only supply this much. So we wind up having this huge gap between supply and demand. This is how much there is, this is how much people want, and we have created a shortage in this particular good because the price is artificially low. Ceilings can also have other effects, such as creating black markets. People are willing to pay more for a particular good. It just doesn't exist in the market, so they find an illegal way to purchase those goods. This is where we get black markets. All right, the flip side of that is a price floor. A price floor is a minimum price that you can set for a good or service. That is, you're not allowed to charge less. These are more common than price ceilings, and we see them everywhere in our economy all the time. One way that we see this is the minimum wage. The minimum wage exists to set a floor on what people can charge for their labor. All right? So in this scenario, you are the producer, and what you are producing is labor. You're producing work. But when the minimum wage is set, you might be willing to work for $7 an hour, but have a local minimum wage set higher than that, say $8.25 an hour. If the people are willing to work for $7, but businesses cannot accept less than $8.25, then we have a gap. And this creates a surplus, or in this case, a surplus of workers, people who are willing to work but don't have a job. What you get is you get unemployment. People cannot sell their labor for less than a minimum wage. Producers are not willing to pay that larger amount, and therefore we get this gap. Another price floor example, we do this in food sometimes. We'll set a price floor on the price of bushels of corn. Again, we do this to create an artificial surplus to make sure that we have more food than we need. That is occasionally done. Not always done, but it is occasionally done to protect businesses, to make sure that people keep producing food. All right, so that was how supply and demand meet. In a perfect world, they get there by themselves and find that equilibrium price, but we do put in price controls, ceilings, and floors in order to direct the market, but this also creates shortages and surpluses. I hope you learned something today, and farewell.